Why do billionaires listen to little-known David Newby? This week we're going to find out in TGIF at Work podcast. Stay tuned. I think you'll find it helpful to you as well.
How do I bring my faith to work? How do I tap into the power of God in my work-life call? Why am I going through this adversity? Is God mad at me? I'm Oz Hillman, and I've been helping leaders like you answer these questions and more for over 30 years. That's what this podcast is all about. Let's learn and grow together. Welcome to TGIF, Today God is First. Welcome to our TGIF at Work podcast. This week, I've got a good friend that's been a friend for a long time. We haven't seen each other in a while until recently we reconnected. David Newby. And David has a book out called Beyond Billions, Create Lasting Wealth Using Trillionaire Solomon's Success Secrets. And David's been both on the top and bottom of wealth, as I have. And we both can probably say we're Josephs in our marketplace calls, because we've lost it all and regained it all, and learned to put Christ in the middle of all of it now, and just allowing God to use us to be Josephs. And if you're a Joseph, you're called to be a spiritual and physical provider to us, to others. And that's what we're going to talk about today. David really serves that, 1/2 of 1% out there that are the billionaire marketplace. And he's going to tell us how that happened. And we're going to learn what it means to have a lasting legacy. And even the same lessons that he's teaching billionaires, he can teach you as well. And this book does it. I just finished this book this morning, so it's well done, and a lot of wisdom in here from Hard Knocks, I can tell you. That's where we learn the best, I think, that last in our lives. So David, good to have you with us today.
Thank you, Oz. It's a pleasure to be here.
David, I can't remember the last when you and I first met. Do you remember?
I believe it was around 2010. So I saw you at an event in Toledo, and then I came to one of your events in Atlanta. I remember real vividly talking about, I have a $10 billion bill here from Zimbabwe. I like to use these bills for two things. One, to think abundantly, our God owns everything. And number two, don't put your faith in any one currency. In 2008, the president of that country made their money worthless in 1 year. But from your 2011 event you hosted in Atlanta, I was driving two gentlemen from South Africa in my rental car back to the airport along 285, the perimeter of Atlanta, for those of you who don't know Atlanta. And Tyler Perry passed us. I was talking with my friend from Detroit, who was in the passenger seat, had just moved to Atlanta, and we're explaining who Medea is to our two South African brethren in the back seat, and we're like imitating Medea. I'm MA to the DEA, and then I saw a Rolls Royce coming up behind us, and I'm like, oh, I bet that's Medea right there. It was Tyler Perry. So that was a fun experience. I don't think I shared with you right after we left your conference in 2011.
How about that? Yeah. Well, David, just give us a little bit of background on yourself and how you got to where you are. We're going to unpack some of those things, but just give us some of your personal story and your journey.
Yeah, certainly. So I'm going to sort of start out with the beginning of my business career and then go back to childhood and sort of end where I am now. At 30, in 2012, a year after I was at your conference in Atlanta, I spent 7 months in the Philippines on a business trip. I published my second book in the Philippines, did several national TV and radio interviews there promoting it. And it was about how to buy and sell gold legally. And I realized on that trip that this trip was supposed to be like 2-3 months, ended up being 7 months. My wife and my two sons were with me for a month of that time, but I was apart from my wife and my two sons for 6 months. And I realized literally after a guy in the jungle threatened to kill me on a gold deal that, like, I got back to the hotel and I'm like, what am I doing? It's like, I'm sure I'm working on these gold deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but at what cost? Like the cost to my family of being apart from my kids. The one thing I never wanted to be was an absent father. I had a stepdad who was a workaholic. So the first 7 years of my life, I basically saw him Saturday morning, we would deliver newspapers with him for a couple hours and go swimming in this apartment complex's pool in our underwear at the end of the shift. And Sunday morning, going to church. That was about the only time I saw him. Other than that, he was working. So in that trip in the Philippines, I was like, this is not good. And I really sought the Lord's wisdom. And I realized everything I had done in business for the previous 10 years was to prove my worth to my dad, who's not on my birth certificate, and to my stepdad, who told me he wouldn't adopt me. So from age 7 to 37, for 30 years, I carried a rejection identity. And I'm turning 47 this summer. And basically, the Lord in the last decade has really done a healing work in my heart, where I've renewed myself studying the Word with who I am as a son. And I got to give a shout out to your book, Listening to the Father's Heart. When we experience God at a heart level as a father, and not just at a mind intellectual level, it does a transformational work in our life. And that was what I experienced. And so I found the first 3 billionaires that I talked to, I really wanted their affirmation. I wanted their attaboy. I was always looking for mentors and older men to affirm me, but because I never got that from my earthly fathers. And I realized through going much deeper in my study of the Word, it's like, I don't need any man's affirmation. I have the Father of fathers, right? The King of kings affirmation. There's no better affirmation than that. There was a multi-year process of me letting God heal a lot of hurts and a lot of imaginations and a lot of false beliefs conclusions I had come to growing up based upon those experiences with my father. So it's really important, I think, that we look at our business path and our work path and what guides us. And for me, it was like I had words of affirmation is my number one love language. So I had a very strong desire to be affirmed. And I took a lot of unnecessary risk in business to get affirmation. I used to think in order to have a billionaire respect me, I need to be a billionaire. So now I realize, like, that's part of what I wrote my last book, Beyond Billions. I don't need to be worth $1 billion or $5 billion or $100 billion before some billionaire will listen to me. I have access to the wisdom from the King of Kings. And if we look at Joseph and Daniel and all throughout the Bible, there are many people who advised the strongest people in the world. And on paper, they weren't wealthy themselves. So it's really important for us to realize the true wealth we have is from the Word. And we can influence anybody in the world if we effectively share that wisdom with them.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Your book really is practical, and it's also spiritual in understanding the journey that you had as well, and how many billionaires had these same issues. Doesn't matter whether you got money or not money. If you live as an orphan, you live as an orphan, and versus a son. And of course, I teach a lot about that whole understanding that many men live as orphans in their life, and as a result, they have broken families, and especially at that group of people where they have, so much of their wealth is flittered away because of the lack of spiritual foundations in their family.
Yes.
Kind of what motivated you to write this particular book? What was on your heart to write this?
So studying, basically, I come from 3 generations of men. In that healing process that God did in my heart, I learned to let go of the fear of embarrassment and the fear of rejection. And there are 3 generations of men who all murdered family members that are my forefathers. So it's not a great inheritance to receive spiritually. My stepdad killed one of my brothers and almost killed my other one. My grandfather choked my grandmother to death in front of my mom. And my great-grandfather killed my great-grandmother. So when you look at the promises of God, right, it's like God will bring curses upon the 3rd and 4th generation of those that hate him, but blessings upon 1,000 generations of them that love him. So I love that math. That's really, really good. God is so kind in his math of how he blesses so abundantly. But I realized at 17, I made like 3 key decisions. I decided whoever I marry, I'm going to stay married to, because my stepdad had married 10 women and my mom had been married 5 times. So like finding the right spouse was not the answer. I decided that I'm going to be involved in my children's life. I'm going to be an affirming, loving father. I'm not going to be an absent father who leaves an orphan spirit wound in the hearts of my children. And I also decided that I was going to be more stable. I wanted to give my family the stability that I never had. I moved 47 times before I graduated high school. And looking at those things, it was as how I really transformed my mind, and it was a multi-year process. Was at 19, a guy at my church in my college department sat me down and read Proverbs 1 with me. This was on a Wednesday afternoon, not at church, normal times that you're at church. This is in Athens, Georgia. It wasn't Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night church. It was we met on by ourselves in the back of the church, and he read Proverbs 1 with me. So that started, he challenged me for 90 days to read Proverb a day. There's 31 chapters, so you can read whatever day of the month it is, that chapter. And I took his challenge, and I just kept reading Proverbs. So over the years, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes have been a lot of what I have meditated on, because it's just so practical about how to live a successful life, because I did not have that demonstrated to me by my forefathers or by the people around me. There were good godly men in the different churches I went to over the years. I think because I was carrying that heart wound, that orphan spirit, I wasn't oftentimes able to receive their affirmation fully, because in my mind, I had told myself that I wasn't good enough. I was rejected. So I wrote this book about the importance of passing on, no matter how much money you pass on, if you don't pass on a spiritual legacy of affirming and speaking your love languages and passing on skill sets and values to the next generation, it doesn't matter how much money you leave them. They're going to blow it anyways. Doesn't matter whether you leave them $100,000 or $10,000 or you leave them $100 billion. Jeff Bezos decided, or Elon Musk decided to. I think they'll both end up being worth over 500 billion in the next decade. Even if they left 100 billion to their kids, they will still blow it. Solomon's son is the ultimate example. So to me, Solomon is, that's why I talk about using Solomon's Secrets as a subtitle. Solomon is the ultimate case study in the ultimate blessing of the Lord, applying wisdom in business at the highest level. And he's the ultimate case study in foolishness. He married foreign wives, which God told him not to do. That led him to idolatry, worshiping foreign gods. And his son modeled his foolish behavior in his older age and wasted most of the family wealth. Just to give you an example, despite Jehoshaphat, the great grandson of Solomon, despite him being the king of Judah, he could not get the gold ship business going again. He couldn't even get the ships down to the mines. And so that just shows you how the wisdom of how he ran his business was lost in the past, because he did pass on his values and skill sets. We need to stay faithful to God's principles to the end of our life. It's way more important to finish well than to begin well. Solomon began great and he finished poorly, which he talks a lot about in Ecclesiastes. He looks back on the mistakes he made, and he can see the cost of his mistakes. So anyone watching this, if you see some weaknesses, some pains in your relationship with your kids and your spouse, seek wisdom from the word and ask the Father, what shifts do I need to make in my being and operating in agreement with the truths of the word, so that I can be the husband my wife needs, so I can be the father that my children need, and practically apply the wisdom of the word in empowering them. That is the key. Everything is spiritual at a foundational level, and then the material shows up. So there are a lot of guys, you probably met guys that are worth millions and millions of dollars, and they go through multiple wives, and they go to church and they want what's best for their families, but we perish for lack of knowledge. So it's very important that we ask the Lord for knowledge and ask him for wisdom, and he'll give it to us. We entrepreneurs have no lack of vision, but we oftentimes perish for lack of knowledge.
Yeah. So how did it happen that God opened the kind of this niche area of wealthy people for you to minister to that group of people?
Well, I think in extremes. I grew up in with extreme violence, right? As my forefathers, it wasn't just murder; it was adultery, it was abuse, just every kind of abuse you can think of. My family has mastered a lot of those types of abuse, and so in my search for wisdom, I think in terms of extremes, I had extreme foolishness demonstrated to me, and lived on welfare. Even when my stepdad made a lot of money, he would give my mom just enough money to pay the bills. Like, we lived in a trailer and just got by, and my mom made our clothes. We were so poor that she had to make our clothes instead of buying name brand clothes. And, with that poverty spirit, I really realized, to become wealthy, we need to apply wisdom. So I was, first of all, seeking to apply wisdom. And for many years, I wanted to be wealthy to prove myself to the world. And so the Lord really healed myself of that desire. I realized I don't need to prove myself to anyone. But for many years in business, I was operating from that belief that I needed to prove something. So when you look at the cost, I looked at the cost of the foolishness of my forefathers and what it did to me, like literally 30 years of making costly mistakes that hurt my family because of a lack of knowledge. And so then I was actually on a trip in the Philippines. My wife's from the Philippines. I lived there as a missionary as a kid. I've been there 10 times to speak the language. Sort of like to joke, I'm a Filipino trapped in a white man's body. My friend Joel calls me a reverse coconut. He says I am brown on the inside, white on the outside. So I love the country, and on a trade mission in the Philippines, I had the thought, looking at all these multimillionaire Filipinos who lived in America and wanted to do business and bless their home country. There are many of them were paying for scholarships for kids through scholarships, feeding programs, college, a lot of great nonprofit work, but they were all doing it on their own. So I thought of the Ecclesiastes, 2 is better than 1, a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Like, these guys would be so much more effective if they would mastermind and share best practices and work together in unison. And so I had the thought, I wonder who is doing masterminds for billionaires. I just went to the ultimate extreme. Who can make the biggest materially impact in the world? It's billionaires. So I did a lot of research and found out there were no mastermind groups in the world for billionaires, which really surprised me. Right around that time, the Giving Pledge was created. For those who don't know, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, the 2 richest men in the world at the time, inspired by a guy named Chuck Feeney, created this group to encourage other billionaires to give away half or more of their wealth during their lifetime. And that's inspired by a guy named Chuck Feeney. He wrote a book called The Billionaire. A book was written about him called The Billionaire Who Wasn't. He was listed as the 10th richest person in the world when Forbes first started putting out their rich list. They thought he was worth around $5-7 billion. What people didn't know is he had put 90% of his wealth into a foundation. And he was inspired by Andrew Carnegie he wanted to give away almost all of his wealth during his lifetime. And so just looking at my own journey of, even though billionaires want to make a big impact, and they were with the Giving Pledge, their families were still perishing for lack of knowledge. So I took my pain. I think if we can take our biggest pain, it can oftentimes become our biggest superpower. I took the rejection, the foolishness of my forefathers, and I went, this is horrible that the wealthiest people and male business leaders are perishing for lack of knowledge, and their families are falling apart and all the cost of that. And so I just decided, let me teach the wisdom of the word to lost billionaires and Christian, billionaires as well. And also I have, millionaire Christian clients and lost clients. It's not just billionaires. But I just thought, how can I make the biggest impact on the culture? Partly it was inspired by what I learned at your event in 2011. You said, if you can influence just 2 or 3 people at the key of any of the 7 key spheres of society, you can impact the culture of that whole industry. And so I'm a math nerd. I'm like, how can I make the biggest impact for the kingdom? If I can go influence 20, 30, 40 billionaires, I can influence their whole industries. Mm-hmm. So this is how my ministry to billionaires and leaders in different industries came about, combining the wisdom of the word with the foolishness of my forefathers and just thinking at extremes. How can I be the most fruitful for the kingdom? Let me go where most Christians don't go, to the tops of these different spheres. And billionaires do have really good protection mechanisms and gatekeeper mechanisms in place. But they also are the least ministered to. So when I read Timothy, instruct those that are wealthy in this world to do good and to share with those who are poor. The 1 Timothy chapter, I think it's 6 or 5, is so instructive. It's like, don't pursue wealth, right? Don't pursue riches. That's a snare. But at the same time, instruct those that are ultra wealthy in this world to build up eternal riches. And so that chapter of 1 Timothy was really combined with things I learned from you and many other great thought leaders were in my family background, is how this whole ministry came about.
Yeah. Awesome. So in the book, you talk about a number of keys to creating multi-generational success. And I noticed that you say the word success instead of wealth. And tell us about some of the things that you talk about there.
Yeah, so there are 3 key things, thank you for that distinction about success versus wealth. Success, I think, is measured in how well are you stewarding and teaching your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren how to steward wisdom. So stewarding wisdom is the key to any material success, whether it's relational, financial. 90% of estate planners focus on how do you protect the money from taxes, estate taxes, when you die. 90% of succession planning is about the business. There is nowhere near enough. I like to say that your family is the most important division of your business. And so if you want to pass on success, let us apply business best practices to our family. So if you look at the spiritual roots of how do you impact somebody, you need to affirm them, love them, make them feel heard, make them feel important. If that's investing time. It doesn't have to. Some business guys that are very driven, they work a lot and they oftentimes feel very guilty that they're not spending enough time with their family. And I think it's good to ask the question, how can I operate in greater wisdom? And so I think the key things as to creating multi-generational success is affirm, heal any wounds from ways you may have cursed or said something, demeaning, or sometimes as parents, we don't mean to, but in our anger, sometimes we say a really hurtful thing to our kids. So we want to heal any past hurts. It says in the Bible that God wants to turn the hearts of their fathers back to their children and the children to their fathers. So I think that healing past wounds is foundational to that. Then you build on that healed, right? You fill in the cracks in the foundation, so the foundation is solid. Then you build upon that affirmation and skills transfer. And by the way, that works in all relationships. It works in your marriage. It works with your kids. It works in your business. If you really commit to being a man that is humble, that quickly says, I'm sorry, that doesn't let offenses build up, right? Because you're prideful and you're thinking, oh, I'm the boss, I don't need to apologize. Like when you exemplify and totally embrace Jesus's level of ultimate humility, this is how you keep a solid foundation of people being on the same page. Then you affirm your people, and then you pass on values and skills. A lot of times there's too much focus on the skills and not the values. So it's really important that just look at the fruit of the Spirit, demonstrating and living from a place of love, joy, and peace, patience, kindness, goodness. When you apply that in your family and in your business, these are the spiritual keys and foundational keys to building multi-generational success. And I encourage every person in the book I give you a specific game plan, how to create a 5-generation plan for your family. And in order to carry out a vision for 5 generations, your family has to have a spirit of unity when it comes to values. So I like to paint the picture of what's in it for me, right? We all ask ourselves that question. What's in it for someone watching this or listening to this, for applying this wisdom, is their family can be reaping benefits from all of the success they created now, 5 generations from now. And that gets me very excited. God wants to bless us multi-generationally. For us to unite with God's plans for our family, we need to impart and pass on wisdom and the fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah. So one of the things you talk about in the book is redundancy and how important it is to have redundancy in a business. Explain what you mean by that, and then explain what happens if you don't have that.
Yeah, certainly. So I first got this idea from Richard Branson's book, Losing My Virginity. He talked about how when he was launching Virgin Airlines, his banker showed up at his house on a Saturday morning. And at the time, he had around $500 million of lines of credit for the Virgin record label that he owned. And I'm forgetting what his other core business was. But between the two, at that time, he had $500 million of lines of credit. He was looking to get another $500 million line of credit to buy his first few planes and get staff and all those infrastructure in place to launch his airline. This banker shows up Saturday morning and says, we think you're too big of a credit risk. We're closing your accounts on Monday morning. He didn't even give him 2 business days they open a new bank account as. So he called several bankers, got 2 other bankers actually to give him $500 million of lines of credit each. And so he ended up with $2 billion in capital available instead of he was seeking the billion. And he teaches you never ever want to have just one vendor of any one area. If you have only one vendor and they close your account, look at what the bank tried to do to Mike Lindell a few months back, saying we're going to close your accounts. You can be left scrambling, and your whole enterprise can be at risk. So there's a proverb: the fool sees danger and they keep going. The wise person takes precaution. And so it's important that the biggest risk to any of our businesses is our merchant account being shut down, our bank account getting shut down, a 3-letter agency seizing all of our money and accusing us of something. And how do you defend yourself against false charges if all your money is frozen? These are very real risks that we all face in business. And so having two of everything
now with the woke culture and what we see happening in
yes,
Canada,
they're trying to cancel everybody. There'll be no one left if that philosophy goes to its logical end. So you don't have to be a David Green, suing the federal government because of they're trying to make you pay for someone's abortion, right? Or you don't have to be Chick-fil-A. Not all of us are called to stand in the gap and fight at that level in the culture, but all of us are fighting in our local community. We're standing for truth, for righteousness, for godliness in our industry, and wherever you are, whether in Atlanta or you're in the Philippines or you're in LA. And so it's really important to have, I think, 2 bank accounts, 2 merchant accounts, have 2 of everything. Even within your own company, you want for every key function of your business, you want at least 2 staff people to know how to do that task. Or if one person dies in a car wreck or gets sick or whatever happens or has a death in the family and has to go take care of someone, you are not left scrambling because they're the only person in your business who can do that thing. So yeah, that's what I talk about redundancy. You want to, I used to work on computers. They used to call them RAID systems. You just have backups of all your hard drives. Just how you back up your hard drive, you back up other things. Always have a backup vendor and a backup staff person that can form every key task. If you do that, that's wise stewardship and the way to see a danger and take precaution.
So we're talking about Beyond Billions, Create Lasting Wealth Using Trillionaire Solomon's Success. So where can they get this book, David?
I have a website, beyondbillions.com. There's links to the Kindle, the hardcover. I even did an Audible for this book. It's my first book that I did an Audible for, as well as Barnes & Noble. I like to support actual physical bookstores. So I always say, hey, if you use Barnes & Noble, like get a physical hardcover from them, Yeah. I like to, it's good to not buy everything from Amazon,
Yeah.
Build a little redundancy into the book industry here.
That's right. That's right. You talk about how to build a great business and a great family at the same time. So often one or the other suffers, for successful people. What are some tips you're giving people in the book?
So one of the main tips is to schedule everything. When my sons were young and I was early in business, I started going into business at 30. That's when I formed my first LLC of my own that wasn't just being in an MLM with somebody. I remember I used to feel really guilty because I noticed that I would oftentimes work until 8 or 9 o'clock and my wife wanted to have dinner at 7. And so I realized as I schedule appointments, so I just started scheduling 7 to 9 every night was family time. So we would eat dinner at 7, and then I would spend time with my wife and play with my sons. And that was a great, and for the first year I did that, I actually felt guilty. Like, why do I have to schedule time with my family? But then I realized if something's on my calendar, I will oftentimes, override it. And so I just set an appointment with my family and kept it. And by the way, if you're a business person who struggles with that same way, imagine it this way. Who is your favorite billionaire in the whole world, or pastor or thought leader, author, whoever it is? If you had an appointment to meet that person, would you let some other thing tell you to try to move that appointment? If you were going to meet with Elon Musk and he was going to share with you how to help you scale your business, would you miss that appointment or would you keep that appointment? You would keep it. So I started treating my time with my family like I was meeting a billionaire. And also my quiet time with the Lord. I used to have my quiet time in the evening, and it would often not be the best quality because I was tired. So I switched to having my quiet time in the morning where I'm fresh, energetic. And I treat my quiet time the exact same way as if I'm meeting a billionaire. Like, I'm not going to brush off this appointment to do something else. And so I think it's really important I think that's one thing that you want to do, how to have a great family, schedule time with your family, and treat it. When you treat it like you're meeting a billionaire, that helps you be mentally present and not distracted when you're with them.
Yeah, that's something I learned years ago about scheduling time for things that, because, if you don't do that, the devil will steal that time, and you'll just be, the business will be running you, and you, instead of you running the business. So you have to schedule those times. I hear people say, they lament about not being able to write a book, or they just don't have the time to do it, or they just can't get to it. I said, you you make a priority what's important to you, and you just have to build that time in, and it'll get done. Even if you worked on it 30 minutes a day, it'll eventually get done. But so many people just let time be stolen, and that's just a very, very important one. So, as we wrap up today, we haven't nearly touched many of the things in here, but you talk about one of the big things you talk about in here is estate planning, and how often more than 50% of those plans fail. That was quite a shock, but I can see why. Touch on a little bit why those plans often fail.
Yeah, so it's important to us that to realize you can have the best plans in the world, and a lot of guys, we compartmentalize things. We're like, do I have that done? Check off that box. Estate plan done, check box. Succession plan done, check the box. I've talked to my kids. One of them or more of them are going to run it. I'm good in both of those places. When you don't pass on your values, no matter how good your estate or your succession plan are, the unresolved heart issues that your children have is going to show up, and they're going to fight with each other over that. I just heard of a gentleman, his kids squandered a $20 million estate he left them over a $20 harmonica of his that he used to play after dinner every night. They literally spent all of their inheritance trying to get that harmonica. I'm like, if you would have just said, hey guys, who wants the harmonica? Oh, well, we all want it. Okay, great. I'm going to buy 2 more harmonicas. You each get a harmonica when I die, right? He never thought to ask his kids that question, but it just goes to show you, in essence, that harmonica, the kids came to covet it because it represented something so powerful to them. And so that shows really right there the importance of not letting something be an idol. But oftentimes, attention from us, if we're not strategically investing time with our family and passing on our values, we might not realize it, but time with us or affirmation from us can become an idol for our kids. So it's vital that you, again, heal wounds and pass on affirmation and skills transfer to the next generation. So that to me is just really, really sad that, and part of why I talk so openly now, because God has healed my heart about my family background. So a lot of men and women hide things from their past because they haven't faced it themselves and they haven't been healed of it. And they think, man, if someone knew this about me, they wouldn't like me, they would reject me. So I think it's, I always like to joke and call myself the chief confession officer, to have a little fun with our Catholic friends, right? Like, confess your sins one to another that you may be healed, right? Jesus as our high priest, he intercedes on our behalf. We have full healing available, but it's vital that we confess our sins and not let a fear of man cause us to keep things that are, that oftentimes shows up as addiction. In your book, Change Agent, you talk about addiction is just an unresolved hurt showing up. People are medicating that hurt, that emotional hurt as adults. It doesn't matter whether it's pornography or alcohol or even success and striving to make that next million, that next billion, that can become an addiction in and of itself. So another benefit as of redundancy, just to sort of wrap up, is when you learn to pass on skill sets to the next generation, your business can run without you. That is a key thing, building redundancy in your business, to having more time for your family. So it helps you have a better family, learning to replace yourself in the business. Secondly, it also enables your succession plan. If your kids don't want to run your business, which oftentimes our kids have different interests than us, we're all created uniquely by the Lord. That enables your business to be a sellable asset when you have your systems documented and multiple people who can do those things. So by applying the wisdom of the word, we can have a much better estate and succession plan and have a great family and a great business. And lastly, just talking about Mike Lindell, I think it's important that we as the church, right? I think in terms of extremes, so that's why I approach billionaires, and by God's grace, I've been able to talk to 117 of them. I say that just because I want to encourage you listening or watching. You can do anything. Just as the Lord used Joseph, the Lord can use you to do anything despite your background. Like, don't think I'm special. I just was obedient to what the Lord called me to do, and he's the one who opens the doors. But in terms of us as the church, how do we make the biggest impact influencing these 7 spheres? I think it's vital that we as the church, imagine if there was a way where like we have our own communication systems that we can't be canceled off of, as the church. Many people have tried it, but they haven't got traction yet, right? There's been Gap, and Truth and Getter and all these different platforms. And multiple of them have got good usage, but it hasn't been as high as I think a lot of people would have hoped. I think it's important that when it comes to banking, imagine there was a future where, like, as the church, we could do banking and not worry about getting canceled by even the nation that we live in financially. So I think as a church, we should be thinking at scale like that. And if you do, God can open amazing doors. You know, God's been opening doors for me to buy a $10-15 billion gold mine in the Philippines. I've never bought an asset of that size, but he gave me the vision, and I'm being obedient to the vision. But the reason why I'm doing it is I have no desire to be worth $15 billion. I don't need to be on the Forbes list. That's not my goal. My goal is actually to give 90% of it to the church for kingdom building, mostly in the business sphere of society. And so if we allow our God to stretch our thinking, there's no limit to what he can do through us. And I think I just want to inspire people listening or watching. Don't limit at all what God can do through you. You know, there's no reason you could not be a Daniel or a Joseph yourself. And I don't know about you guys. I don't want the responsibility of, being the right-hand man of the biggest economy in the world. You know, I wouldn't want someone to say you're the head of the treasury. You know, you're in charge of a $7-8 trillion a year economy. That's a lot of responsibility. What I do get excited about is being able to empower the church to not be cancelable. That gets me very, very excited. And we have the technology to do it now. We just need to be strategic as a body of Christ working together. So I think it's important to, marry like crypto with old school gold. As you can see, I study a lot and read a lot. If people don't like to read books, we talk about books. And you're into economics, you should. It's like 9 years old. I think, was it 2012 or 13? You guys did the Sign of the Times Economic Conference. Chris Kirshner spoke at it. You, Craig Hill, Chris Kirshner, you all had great talks at that conference. And we as the church should be thinking in terms of, if the government's keeping foolish and collapsing our currency, which we see all over the world, inflation, we should be looking for solutions to that. So if you're not much of a book reader and you like audiobooks better, I would say get the audios to the Sign of the Times Economic Conference and ask God for wisdom about how do you be wise and you see danger and you take precaution. That's what I'm doing, working with believers that are doing things at scale. And I want to encourage people watching or listening to do the same.
Awesome. All right. The website is beyondbillions.com, beyondbillions.com. You can find his book there and anywhere online, Barnes and Nobles, wherever books are sold. So, David, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. And, there aren't too many people that minister to that niche, and it's a much needed thing. So thanks for being obedient, and God bless you.
Thank you, Oz. It's a pleasure being with you.
All right. Take care.
Imagine an opportunity where everyone wins, enjoys daily rewards, and is part of something that is bringing mass adoption of trends that will become everyday essentials like the internet and mobile phone. Those who positioned early in the introduction of the personal computer, the internet, and the mobile phone revolution all prospered in ways most cannot imagine. Did you capitalize on these trends by being an early adopter? This is your opportunity to position yourself in front of the next revolution, the blockchain revolution, potentially one of the biggest trends ever. Don't worry if you don't know about blockchain or understand it fully. Many people don't fully understand most technologies that have become part of everyday life, like the internet, 4G, smartphones, and more. What is becoming evident is that blockchain technology will change the world in the same way the internet and mobile phones has become an essential part of our daily habits. Blockchain technology is being adopted more and more by governments, big business, financial institutions, and everyday people on a daily basis. Blockchain technology led to the creation of Bitcoin, a cryptocurrency that sparked a revolution in the financial industry. It has brought about transparency and innovation in how we store and transfer value, record information, and perform many other day-to-day actions. In the last 2 years, the volume of cryptocurrency transactions has grown from $6 trillion to $20 trillion. This multi-trillion-dollar industry is exploding in size, and one conglomerate of companies has played an instrumental role in the blockchain space, working with government and the private sector. They have successfully created a growing ecosystem of blockchain solutions that are market leaders in many sectors. This group of companies is already valued at over $10 billion and are destined to become a major player in the blockchain space. What does this have to do with you and how can you benefit? This group knows that great technology is not enough. You need a large, loyal customer base that not only uses your products, but are raving fans telling the world. Their mission is to acquire 30 million loyal customers to further increase their valuation and success story. To accomplish this, they created a lucrative rewards program that is changing lives, attracting more than 500,000 people globally since late 2019. Rewards you receive can be redeemed, withdrawn, and exchanged for cryptocurrencies created and owned by the group. The cryptocurrency you withdraw can be withdrawn to public exchanges and exchanged for popular cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or USDT, or withdrawn to your bank account as fiat currency. Why would they reward participants with such a generous rewards program that has changed lives around the world? Apple helps provide the answer. Apple is one of the well-known companies in the world today, with a valuation of over $1 trillion and the most loyal customers of any brand in the world today. How did they achieve this amazing result? When Apple came out with their amazing products like the iPod, iPhone, and iPad, they knew that great technology would not be enough. Apple invested billions in setting up stores around the world, creating one of the most successful customer acquisition programs to date. Apple staffed their stores with technically trained people who would take the time to educate potential customers on how to adopt this new technology into their everyday lives. Whether you were 7 or 70, technophobic or techno-savvy, people could walk into a store and see a smiling face, put them at ease, take the time needed, and have them walking out a raving loyal fan of Apple products. This conglomerate studied customer acquisition models that would lead to people using their blockchain solutions and sharing them with others. Loyalty reward programs have been a proven model and commonly used by major industries like the airline industry, hotel groups, banks, and credit card providers. This legal, compliant, and very attractive model based around customer acquisition has enabled people around the world to participate in this reward program to gain personal reward benefits, while also accelerating the rewards received for simply sharing the program with others. Membership in this exciting program provides access to education on the blockchain industry, privileged early access to opportunities created by the group, and being part of a global community, enjoying rewards that are changing lives. We invite you to learn more so you can make your own informed decision about whether you want to participate and join 500,000 plus others enjoying daily rewards. Watch our overview video or attend a live online presentation to get the big picture, or simply get started and enjoying the benefits of membership. You'll be glad you did.